In this video, we're going to be talking about insights. We're going to be talking about all of the different things that Facebook can tell you about the campaign that you're running. This is really, really important for a couple of reasons. Obviously, you want to know what your campaign's doing. You want to know what you're getting for your money. But you also want to be able to diagnose potential problems that might be causing your campaign to not fulfill its complete objective. You're familiar at this point with the Facebook Business Manager, and you've seen this screen where we have our campaigns here, and we have all of these different insights in all of these different columns. So what do all of these mean? That's what I want to do today. I want to go through and show you what all of these different insights mean to sort of give you the tools to be able to make these diagnoses yourself. So firstly, I want to draw your attention to this little arrow up here on the Business Manager. If you click this is where you can customize all the different columns that you want to appear in your Business Manager. And the reason why you want to do this is because sometimes you want to have more information than the Business Manager would typically give you by default. So here's a list of all the different insights that we can gain on how our campaign is running. So I'm going to go through this list one by one and give you a brief synopsis of what this actually means. Results is the first one here, and results is a very simple insight. It just tells you how many results, given the objective that you've set, have you achieved. For example, if I have a lead generation campaign where I'm trying to get subscribers, the results column is just going to show me how many subscribers that campaign has managed to get. Alternatively, maybe I've got a video view campaign, and that same results column, instead of showing the leads generated in the campaign that I just mentioned, the results column would now show how many video views this campaign has had. Let's say we had a third campaign which was just about reach. The results column would show how many people that campaign has reached. So in short, the results column will show the result depending on how that objective has been set in the campaign. When it comes to the result rate, if you take everyone who's seen that advert, and then look at just the people who completed the action that that objective was set for, that is the percentage result rate. That is what percentage of people actually completed the objective of that campaign. If I have 100 people that I've served an advert to watch video views, and 5 people actually watched the video, my result rate is 5%. Moving down to reach, this is quite simply how many people have seen this advert at least once. It's really important that we distinguish this between impressions. Impressions is a way of saying that you've served your advert to somebody. For example, if I serve 10 impressions, that means that I have put my advert in front of 10 devices. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that I've put it in front of 10 people, because some people can see an advert more than once. That's important when we pull this back to frequency. Now, taking this slowly, let's say that we have 10 people in a room, all in their mobiles, and we are serving adverts to those people. If we spend enough money to give 10 impressions and our reach is 10, that means that each person has seen that advert at least once. This means that our frequency, on average, is 1. If we spend more money and our impressions now becomes 20, that means that we've served our ad 20 times, but there's only 10 people in the room. If our reach is 10, meaning that each individual person has seen the advert at least once, that means that in actual fact, if we averaged everybody in that room, everyone must have seen it on average twice. I hope that makes sense. Going one step further, if we then served 100 impressions, we would know that on average our frequency would be expected to be 10 if we're reaching all the people in that room. Delivery just outlines whether your campaign is active or not. That's really simple, and when it comes to ad set delivery, it's exactly the same. It just tells you whether your ad set is active or whether it's been paused or stopped for some reason. If you have an advert that's been flagged, or maybe there's too much text in it, there's lots of reasons why ads sometimes stop running, and this is where you'll get a flag that will tell you that it's been stopped. The amount spent column does exactly what it says on the tin. It just tells you how much money you've spent on the campaign. The clicks column tells you how many people have clicked on that advert, and the cost per click, or the CPC, simply tells you how much money has it cost you for each one of those clicks. If I've spent £100 and I get 10 clicks on my advert, I know that my CPC, my cost per click, would be 10, because it's cost me £10 for each one of those 10 clicks, and I've spent £100. This goes on to the next thing, which is CTR. CTR just stands for click-through rate. It tells you of all of the people who have seen your adverts, what percentage of them actually click through. If 100 people see my ad and 13 people click on my advert, that means that my click-through rate is 13%. I'm going to skip past gross impressions and auto refresh impressions because I don't think that's relevant right now, but gross impressions just means how many times have you served an advert that isn't necessarily a real person, and auto refresh impressions is about adverts that come up on your feed because you're refreshing your browser. Moving down to the ad relevance diagnostics. Facebook Business Manager wants to do its best to make you a good marketer. It wants to give you the best insights possible so that you are getting the best effect from your budget, because obviously if your business is growing from using this, then that's their business model because they want you to spend more money on the platform. So these things can be quite helpful in determining whether your ads are performing above or below average when comparing to all of the other adverts that are serving. You've got to consider that whatever campaigns you're trying to run, there's millions of other people running similar campaigns, and these little breakdowns will tell you whether your campaigns pound for pound are performing better or worse than other ones. If they're below average, it at least gives you a little bit of an alarm bell to try and start diagnosing how you might be able to improve your ad. And this is kind of broken down into the three things you see here: the ad quality, the ad engagement, and the ad conversion, which is basically giving you a ranking on those three different principles. Just going one step forward into that might be the quality of your advert and how people are reacting. The engagement is how many people actually make engaging actions on that advert in comparison to everyone else. And then there's the conversions. How many times are you getting your desired conversion out of this campaign when you compare it to all of the other adverts that are out there? So moving down to cost per result, similar to results, this changes depending on your campaign objective. So your cost per result will show you simply how much each result has cost you when you consider the objective that you set for the campaign. For example, if you have a lead generation campaign and you've spent £10 and you've got 100 leads, the cost per result would be 10p. Moving on to the cost per 1,000 people reached, that is obviously just going to tell you for every 1,000 unique users that have been reached, who have seen your advert at least once, that is how much it has cost you, the cost per 1,000 people reached. Now, that's slightly different to the CPM, which stands for cost per milli. That basically says how much has it cost you to serve 1,000 impressions. So you've got to bear in mind that some people can see your ad more than once. So if you've served 1,000 impressions, it doesn't mean that 1,000 people have seen your advert. So we could touch on this when it comes to the frequency. Let's say that our CPM is £1. We've spent £1 and we've served 1,000 impressions. If our frequency is 2, that might allude to saying that we've reached 500 people, i.e. they've seen the advert on average twice. When you're spending money on a campaign, it's often really useful to find out how many people are engaging and what they're actually doing. I might want to know how many people are sharing that post, how many people are liking it, how many people are commenting on it. That's where these page post analytics come into play. It's really important to realize that the page engagement analytic is actually a really wide one. That counts people who have clicked on your post or liked it or shared it or watched 3 seconds of a video or pretty much done anything to do with your advert. So this is a really wide audience. And what I mean by wide is there's a very small barrier of entry to become someone who is engaged with the page due to the advert. Moving down to page likes, this quite simply is how many people have gone on to like your page based on seeing the advert. I'm sure it's fairly self-explanatory, but when it comes to post comments, engagements, reactions, saves, shares, photo views, these things just tell you how many of those actions have happened due to seeing your advert. So if anyone who sees your ad goes through to make any one of these actions, for example, saving a post or sharing it, that's where this is going to display in your Facebook Business Manager. And just under that, we have event responses. Now, you might know that if you're working in Facebook, you have the ability to make events. Whether you're holding a talk or doing a concert or whether you're doing a live stream, sometimes you can make a Facebook event that has all of the details for where this is and where the tickets can be bought and all of the information to do with that event. Now, one thing that's worth looking at is under the engagement objective in Business Manager, you can do a couple of different things aside from just getting engagement on a post. You might ask Facebook Business Manager to market to people who are most likely to respond to an event you've made or most likely to like your Facebook page. When it comes to event responses here as this analytic, this is simply going to tell you of all the people who saw your advert, how many went through to go and RSVP for an event. This is very similar with check-ins. As you know, on Facebook, you can check into certain businesses, and that's very similar to event responses. If someone sees your ad and then checks into your Facebook location, that's going to register on this analytic. Going down to in-view impressions and in-view reach, all this means is how many impressions were served when they saw 100% of your ad. Now that's slightly different to in-view reach, which is just how many people saw your ad to 100% at least once. How many unique users? That's what the reach is about. Slightly different to impressions. When it comes to the effect share, it's probably not so relevant for this right now, but this is about using the effects in story posts and stuff like that. So if someone sees your ad and then uses your effects in a different post, that's going to show up in this metric. Moving on now to cost page and post. This is where you're going to start seeing how much it's costing you per action taken on your page. Here's a simple example. If I'm running a campaign and I spend £10 and 10 people go and like my page afterwards, that means that it would have cost me £1 for every page like that I've generated. Now, you've got to bear in mind that this is going to vary a lot depending on what your objective is set. For example, if you make an engagement campaign, which is optimized for page likes, you're basically saying to Facebook, I want you to market to all the people who are likely to like my page, which means you're very inclined to find that your cost per page like is going to go down. So this set of analytics, the cost per page engagement, page like, post engagement, and event response, is quite simply saying how much money is it costing you to generate one of these outcomes. As I scroll down, we're looking at messaging now. And if you remember when we were talking about our objectives earlier in the series, if we're going to make a campaign which is optimized to find people who are likely to message my page, this is just going to tell me how many new messaging connections have been made, i.e. of all the people who have seen the advert, how many people clicked a button to go and message my page and start a conversation. Now, on the other side of that, sometimes people can block a messenger conversation. Now, this should definitely ring alarm bells because this is where you can see how many users have decided to block your page because the conversation wasn't what they expected or wasn't what they wanted. And that's going to tell you how many people have blocked the messaging connections on your page. So as we scroll down now to media, we have unique 2-second continuous video plays. Now, when I'm running a campaign trying to get people to watch videos, there's very different levels of engagement. Some people scroll straight past it and they don't even watch 2 seconds. Some people might watch up to 15 seconds, whilst other people might watch a whole 10-minute documentary. So this is all about trying to figure out how much engagement has been given on our content. So as you can guess, unique 2-second continuous video view plays just tells me of all the people who have seen this video, how many of them have actually watched 2 seconds continuously and how many of them are actually unique users. That's very different to the total number of 2-second or 3-second video plays, because you can imagine that the same person might go and do that more than once. Moving on to through plays. Through plays, I'm not quite sure why they call it this, but this just means how many people have watched up to 15 seconds of the video. And as you can imagine, if I have a video that is 100 minutes long, video views at 25% mean how many people watched through that 25% barrier. Likewise, how many people would watch through the 50%, the 75%, or the 95% or 100% barrier. I just want to talk really quickly about how handy this particular insight is, because if you're making a video for your brand, whatever it is, this is the best way to try and understand your viewer retention. It's the best way to understand how many people are actually consuming all of this content. You know, if you have really weak content, you're going to find that you're going to have tons and tons of 3-second views, but then you're not going to have any 25% or 50% of views, because lots of people might be seeing or being exposed to your advert, but no one's actually sticking around to watch this thing. This is probably one of the most integral things to get right, because when it comes to marketing, video is king. You know, video almost always outperforms normal content ads like pictures. So if you're going to make sure that your videos are working as well as possible, you're going to want to make sure that your viewer retention is high as possible. That means, quite simply, making great content that people want to stick around and watch. So if we look at video average playtime, it's worth considering that sometimes people can watch and re-watch the same video. So let's say, for example, you have a 1-minute video. Someone could have maybe 6 minutes of video watch time if they watch that video 6 times back to back. Now, the reason why I say that is because the way to think about the average video playtime is if you add up all the minutes watched of a particular video and then you divide that by the number of people who have seen the video, that's going to give you your average video watch time. This is another good insight when you're trying to consider whether you've got good retention on your videos, i.e. whether your content's good or bad. Now, when you are marketing with Facebook Business Manager, there is something called the instant experience, which is essentially an advert you can click that opens a full window in your browser. This can be thought of in exactly the same way. The instant experience view time just tells you about the time spent inside that instant experience. And when it comes to the view percentage, that quite simply gives you the average amount of that video as a percentage that's been watched when you consider all the people who went into that instant experience. The next set of insights is about costs, where you're going to see the price breakdown for different levels of engagement in the video. You know, your cost per 2-second continuous video play, your cost per 3-second video play, and your cost per through play, which, as I mentioned before, is just how many people watch 15 seconds of your advert. This is just going to tell you how much did it cost you for every person that completed that specific task. For example, if I made a video view campaign and it cost me £10 and I generated 100 through plays, I would know that every through play would cost me 10 pence, and that's where I would see that analytic in this column. As I scroll down to clicks, I want to try and give an overview here and move through this list quickly because a lot of the same techniques apply with everything that we've just discussed before. So when it comes to clicks, we can look at something called the CTR, which is your click-through rate. Now, that quite simply says of all the people who have seen the advert, what is the percentage of people who have clicked through. Now, obviously, some people can click through many times. So if I wanted to say, what is my click-through rate of unique users, i.e. I want to know just the unique people that have clicked through and not about people who have clicked more than once, that is my unique CTR, my unique click-through rate. Now, link clicks is just going to tell me how many people have clicked the link, and obviously, as we've already said, sometimes people can click the link more than once. So the unique link clicks tells me how many unique users have actually clicked my links. Outbound clicks just means clicks that have taken them away from Facebook. And that's probably the most important stuff we want to consider when we're looking at clicks. Now, as you can imagine, we can find out quite easily how much these things have cost us, because looking at our costs, we can find out what our CPC is, which is how much has it cost us for every click that's been generated? Now remember, if people are clicking the same link more than once, it might be smart to say to Facebook, look, I just want to know how much it's cost me for every unique person who has actually clicked my link, not just how many clicks it's generated. So we're going to find that cost when we look at our cost per unique link click. As we move forward down to awareness, this is what forms part of the brand awareness campaign. Now, I've got to be honest, it's not 100% clear to me exactly how this works, and I like to try and be precise when I'm explaining these things. But Facebook Business Manager has come up with a metric that it calls brand recall lift. And what it's trying to tell you is, as they study people who are exposed to adverts, and as they do questionnaires and market research in how well people retain an advert's message, there's something about asking someone a couple of days after they've seen an advert whether or not they remember it. That, in short, is what the brand recall awareness is. Is someone going to remember this advert in 2 days' time? So however they deduce that, that's what the estimated ad recall lift is. Now, to try and concrete that a little bit better is if I serve an advert to 100 people and 5 people would remember that in 2 days' time if they were questioned, that means that my ad recall lift is 5. That also means that my estimated ad recall lift rate would be 5%. Now, moving on to the cost awareness, quite simply, if I want to know how much it costs me to put someone in a situation where they would remember my ad in 2 days, that is my cost per estimated ad lift recall. In the last video, we were talking about conversions, and I just touched very briefly on why pixels were important. I think we were giving the example of the dog food, of people going to a website to browse, maybe add things to their basket, maybe check out, maybe end up purchasing. and how this information could be tracked and fed back via Ads Manager. So this is where all of that information sits. Now, I've got to breeze through some of this stuff because a lot of it just isn't relevant to what we're trying to do. Some of this stuff like achievements unlocked might be custom conversions or things to do with in-app purchases. We're just going to ignore that and focus on the most important things. If we look at ads of payment info, ads to cart, ads to a wish list, things like checkouts initiated. These are all about purchase conversions as you watch someone go through the chain of seeing an advert and then eventually, hopefully, buying your product. So the ones that I'd recommend you use here, if you have a pixel installed, are the ads to cart, the ads of payment information, the checkouts initiated, the content views, which is how many people have actually gone to look at a product, and then finally something called ROAS. Now let me find it because here it is. The purchase ROAS just stands for the return on ad spend. And this is really important. I want you to imagine that we are selling t-shirts online. Now, if I make an advert and I spend £1 trying to sell a t-shirt, and someone sees that advert, goes to my store that has a pixel installed, and goes all the way to a checkout and spends £10 on a t-shirt, that means that my ROAS, my return on ad spend, would be 10 because I've spent £1 and generated £10 worth of sales. If I spend £10 selling that same £10 t-shirt, my return on ad spend would be 1, i.e. for every £1 I've spent, I've brought £1 back, i.e. I'm breaking even. Well, in fact, I'm probably losing money if my t-shirt cost me some money to make. But that's why the return on ad spend, the ROAS figure, is very, very important. And obviously you can see here that there's a box underneath called purchases, which is just going to show you the registered amount of money spent on the store. So they're the most important things to consider when you're looking at your conversion metrics. I'm going to round up this video here because at this point, all we're looking at is the custom conversions and some of the settings. Now, we don't have to think about custom conversions, but just so you understand the principle of what it is, you might use a pixel to design some particular conversion that's important to you. Maybe they go to a very specific web page. Now, if you want your pixel to let you know if someone completes that task, that's how you can do it via making custom conversions. We're going to be diving into that in more advanced courses, but just so you understand that, we're going to skip past that now and look at your settings, because as we scroll all the way down to settings, you might want to have displayed in your campaign manager what your account ID is, what your account name is, your campaign name, all of these different simple things that are actually quite easy to find out. Now, I would recommend that you don't necessarily put this in unless you find it really, really useful. For example, if you want to know what date you created adverts, the date that it was last edited if other people are using it, this is where you can put that information in. But all in all, I don't really think that it's worth you spending the time having that information because it's not necessary for what we're trying to do. Similarly, if you wanted to, you can put information about your targeting and your audience from your ad set. You can put that in the list of columns in your campaign manager. Again, if you're building these adverts yourself and you're choosing the locations, there's probably not a lot of reason why you'd want the location to fill up your table. You can put it in there if you find it useful, but I'd recommend that you don't click any of these buttons and you leave all of this blank. So that summarizes all of the important insights that we want to consider. So I hope all of this was useful and I will see you in the next lesson.